Saucy, not Bossy.
Welcome in, everybody. Today, I am so excited to talk to Dr. Courtney J. Williams. She is a licensed psychologist. We all need that in our lives. And also the CEO and founder of Willed by Wellness. Welcome in, Courtney. Dr. Courtney in the house.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I love talking with you because I just feel as though my anxiety goes down 10 levels. Tell me how you get to not being a bobblehead like me.
Man, I get that a lot actually. People will tell me that my voice is soothing. I'm like, maybe I should record some audiobooks or, maximize that a little bit more. But I think on the inside and what you're not seeing, because this is me within a protected frame, but see me outside of here.
Love it. Well, I love what we're about to talk about today because going back to protection and having boundaries with life and people. And I know that's such a big topic. And I wanted to ask you, you do speaking engagements, you're out in the world speaking a lot about boundaries. What do boundaries mean to you? And why is that such a big topic for you as a psychologist?
Yeah, that is such a big question. That's actually a conversation that I've been having all week, actually, because I want people to understand the distinction between boundaries and rules. When folks come to me and say, hey, I've been trying to set these boundaries, but they're not working, oftentimes it's because you are trying to put rules on someone else and control their behaviors and what they're doing. And that would be nice if we can just get other people to do what we say and do what we want them to do. The world will be a better place. However, the distinction is that boundaries are for you. They are what you will and won't do, what you can and can't do, what you have the capacity for, and what you don't have capacity for. They are shaping your behaviors, your actions, and oftentimes those are grounded in your values, your beliefs, and your capacity. So that's a clear distinction that I want people to know the difference between boundaries are for you, rules are for other people.
Okay. So can you give me an example? Because I'm a child of the 80s. And this is a word that I wish I could have used because I was at the grocery store the other day and there must have been a 6, 7-year-old that looked at his mom and said, that is going against my boundaries right now. Like, does that child even know? Like I know a lot of people use the word boundaries, but what exactly when that child's saying that, can you give me an example of maybe what they're feeling when someone says you're going against my boundaries, something that's more than just text, you know?
Yes, yes. So there are different categories of boundaries. There's energetic boundaries, there's emotional boundaries, there's physical boundaries. So, for example, your boundary might be that you're not a hugger. I don't like hugs, I don't like handshakes. And so you get to determine how your body is treated and engaged with. And so that might be when someone comes in for a hug, you might close up, you might instead give them a handshake instead of a hug. We saw this a lot during the pandemic too, when folks were still trying to shake hands and it's like, no, we're doing elbow bumps now. So that would be an example of a physical boundary. And I'm still an elbow bumper. I don't like all the handshakes and no, I don't know where your hands have been. So I will give you an elbow bump or a nice hi, but we don't have to shake hands. It's okay. But ironically, I'm a hugger though. I love a hug. So I will ask, are you a hugger before I go in? Because my knee jerk reaction sometimes is to like just go in. And so I do have to pause myself and ask, are you a hugger before I go in? Because that's someone's personal space, and you don't get to dictate what that looks like for somebody else.
Right. Yeah. No, that's big. And then it's hard for me because I'm Italian. I'm like that puppy dog that's just like, oh, everybody. But I really do appreciate when someone is just like, no. And so that is their boundary. And I have grace with it. I'm good with it. What would you say from your clinical experience? What happens to people mentally and physically when they don't have boundaries?
Mm, mentally and physically, I think it's important that you name both of those because I do think that it's interconnected. And what I say is that you notice those signals. Your body sends you signals when a boundary has been violated. It's just a matter of if we're listening or not. When you're saying yes to something, when you really want to say no, your body sends you a signal. It might be that tightness in your chest, that pit in your stomach, that lump in your throat. But your body, if anyone has ever read The Body Keeps the Score, that is true. That is physiological data and proof that our body holds energy, it holds emotions, and those things that we're saying yes to, but we really mean no. Our body is like, no, girl. No, girl. No, 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 no. And you have to listen to it. So it's physically it's showing up in those different ways. Mentally and emotionally, it's the drain, it's the headaches. For me, when I'm working outside of my boundaries, past my limits, I'll get headaches. And I don't normally get headaches, thankfully. But when I do, that's an indicator that something is off. Like you've pushed yourself past a limit and your body is trying to tell you, hey, listen to me, take care of me, slow down. So it's that emotional drain, it's that fatigue that a nap just doesn't fix. So there are definitely emotional and physical ways that it shows up. It's just a matter of, are you listening?
What would you say to a person that, comes in that does go in for the hug, they didn't want to, then they start experiencing all of those feelings like your body's listening and there could be trauma, right, from the past that they didn't realize, but they finally listened to their body. How do you make the next step so that next time you're not like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 someone get away from me, don't even touch me," to really working that out and having the boundary in a way that's not, um, so stark. Does that make sense?
I think it looks a few different ways. If we're using this example of the hug, there might be some subtle ways that you can create that space so that someone's not coming into your bubble or coming in for the hug. So it might be that you extend your hand for that handshake instead of the hug. It might be that you subtly create physical space between you and that person. It might be taking a step back. There are some folks that even do different versions of a hug, right? There's some two armors, and then there's some that give you a side hug. And I always say it is okay to be direct because it's not your job or your responsibility to take care of someone else's feelings. And so someone might be offended or put off, and that's not your responsibility. So it's okay for you to say, actually, I'm not a hugger, but nice to meet you. Glad to be here. Looking forward to connecting, at this workshop today, whatever the thing is. You don't have to cuss out the person to tell them not to give you a hug. But there is a way for you to still be compassionate and direct at the same time.
That's great advice. What do you say? Because as you're saying that to me, I grew up having to people please a lot, to make sure that there was calm in my house. Right, there was always chaos in my house. So sometimes it's hard for me that I want to make sure everybody's okay. So if somebody comes to give me a or does any of that, I reciprocate back. But at the same time, what do you do if a person's like, "Well, I wanna make everybody happy." Like, I don't wanna make that person upset. What would you say to a person like that?
Yeah, I get that a lot. because a lot of us are recovering people pleasers. And the thing about people pleasing is it's more about us than it is about the other person because it to your point, it's about controlling the chaos, being able to mitigate other people's anticipated responses and behaviors. So it's a way of us taking back our power in ways that maybe we feel like we didn't have any. That's where people pleasing comes from. It's how can I control the situation so that I'm like reducing the chaos, making sure that everything is cool, not walking, I'm not trying to walk on eggshells. I'm trying to like manage any blow ups. So that's where that comes from. And we would talk about that. So I think providing that education and getting folks to re-envision what taking your power back and control looks like. It doesn't have to be people pleasing anymore. You know, you can let that go and shifting that energy back into what you want and what you need. And I'm also thinking about building up what we call distress tolerance. Sometimes it feels easier in the moment to give in because we don't want to deal with the anxiety and the anticipation. It's like, I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what they're going to do if I set this boundary, if I say no here. So I'm just going to do it anyway and like just suck it up and try to like power through rather than saying no and dealing with that discomfort that might come from it. But what happens when we say no and we sit with it or set the boundary and we sit with that likely discomfort that might come, we're like building that muscle. And it
Yes.
does get easier over time to sit with it. You know, it's like learning a new skill, building a new muscle. You have to sit with it a little more, sit with it a little more. It's like wall squats. When I was a cheerleader, oh, I used to hate those. Our coach used to have us sit on the wall and like, all the conditioning, like, but it got easier over time now, but it is hard. Same thing with like building that boundaries muscle essentially. You're saying no, you're saying, no, that doesn't work for me. You're saying, not right now. You're saying, actually, I want to do this instead. And you're also having to sit with the distress, the discomfort that might come with it. And you're building that muscle over time. It does get easier, but it's might be difficult or challenging in the moment.
Yeah, because I like the expression that like no is a full sentence, but like what you were saying is though when you say no and then just people have hard I have a hard time sitting in the silence of that. What are a few phrases you can say to people if like you get invited somewhere and you
Mhm.
don't want to go? like, like Dr. Courtney, you just don't want to go. And so like and you don't want to lie because
Mm,
I'm asking you a million questions, but some people will say, "Well, I had to lie to stand up for myself," and I'm like, "Well, oh, that's a lie. I don't love that." So,
mhm.
how do you not lie and have a like? What's the difference between lying and boundaries? Because boundaries sounds honest.
Right.
Lying
Yeah.
dishonest, right? So, what is that? Why do people say that? Why?
Yeah, I think that folks are coming up with these lies because it's rooted in this fear, you know, this like fear of rejection, this pull to have an explanation when one is not required. Uh, it's a way to soften the no. And so folks come up with these lies, these white lies, you know, you call them to soften the blow or to make whatever their no is feel reasonable. The no is reasonable enough. And so if we're going back to your question about what if I don't want to go to fill in the blank event or party or whatever, how do I say no. That might be, thank you for your invitation, but I'm not available. Let's look at some dates. I'm happy to circle back when I am. Again, like, it doesn't have to be mean, dramatic, rude. You can still be direct and honest and say no. And you being unavailable, that's not a lie. Because if you're saying no because you don't have the capacity, you're saying no because you don't feel like it, you're unavailable.
Yeah. And why, Dr. Courtney? Why are we having this conversation? Like, why was I guilted as a kid? What was that we're even having to figure out these boundaries? I don't understand. Is it just like, I know the word narcissist comes up a lot, and like, I just don't know why I was always raised to be like, well, why aren't you available? Well, I don't see you that busy. Blah blah. Like, does that come from narcissism? Does that come from parents wanting control? Where does that come from? Help.
I think, you're not alone in that. I saw that, experienced that growing up as well, where you see adults in your family, in your life, and they don't have boundaries. So how would they know how to teach you, to model for you how to have them? And so I think that it's a message implicitly and sometimes explicitly that gets passed down generation to generation that sends the message, no, you don't get to have boundaries. No, you don't have permission to rest. No, you're not allowed to say no. And we internalize that in so many different ways. But I do think that it's cultural. I think it's intergenerational. I think about um, Black communities in particular, where we are navigating a lot of different archetypes. For example, there's the strong Black woman archetype. So we see our mothers and our grandmothers giving to others before they give to themselves. We see them being the pillars and having many hats that they wear. And meanwhile, inside, they are slowly dying or crying in the shower or just dealing with their own pain and their own traumas. And so you see that, you see that growing up, you wear that, that becomes the blueprint for how you do life. And we don't oftentimes have a lot of role models for how do you set boundaries? I've had clients to say to me, I wasn't given permission to have boundaries. We weren't allowed to have boundaries. That really sticks with you because it's like, wow, that's true. We're not taught what boundaries are. Like, what are they even? Do I get to have them?
Do you find that a lot more women come to you with this issue than men? Or are you finding that a lot of men have these issues? Because I just feel like, that saying where it's like, if women are assertive, we're bitches, but men, if they're strong, they're just like leaders in the field of
Mm,
sorts. What do you see a lot of? A lot of women mostly?
yeah. So I do see a lot of women in my practice, a lot of Black women in particular. And that's what Will by Wellness is centered around. It's centered around Black women and girls' voices in a society where those voices are often unheard and silenced. Um, and I do actually see a lot of folks, not just women, with boundary issues because, again, I think we do live in a society, Western culture where life is so fast paced. People are in go mode all the time. It's this on to the next, like, microwave culture of it's competitive. We live in a capitalist society. So it is woven in to our culture, where boundaries feel really hard. You know, folks come to me, um, of all gender identities, where it's like work is the central stressor, and work is the primary reason folks are wanting to set boundaries. It's like, this is taking up all of my life, all of my time, all of my week. And I want to be doing the other things, but there's this pressure to perform and to advance in their career and to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. But this work life balance thing feels like a myth. And I do think that boundaries, challenges around boundaries looks different for men and women. You know, I hear a lot of the men that I work with sharing how gender roles plays a big part in why it feels hard for them to set boundaries. My male identified clients who are operating within those traditional gender norms of being the provider, being the protector, being the financial breadwinner, if you will, it's that pressure to be working those 50, 60 hours so that they're making this money, and they feel like there's no other way around that. So they feel like they don't have the time and the space to rest and to say no to this additional project, um, in a lot of similar ways that my female identified clients are.
So what would you say to somebody that is working 50 because they can't sustain that long term? So how would you start breaking that down to be balanced?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. 'Cause again, it's like, oh, having these conversations all the time, and it doesn't have to be this big 180, like, quit your job. That's how you're no, I'm not saying quit your job. I'm not saying that. However, there are small shifts that you can make to give you a little more ease, a little more ease, a little more ease. So, one example of that would be like micro rest rituals, I call them. And that means you don't have to wait for your PTO to kick in. You don't have to wait for that family vacation. You don't have to wait until you're so sick that you actually have to use your sick day. You can build in these micro rest rituals into your day. So that might mean 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, where you are intentionally stretching, taking a water break, taking a lap around your neighborhood. So I call them micro because they don't have to be these large, drawn out vacations or 2 hour breaks in your day, taking a 5 hour lunch. You know, I'm not saying that. The more that you can build in those micro rest rituals, the better you'll be in the long term so that there is that sustainability there. And, you know, research shows us that those little micro rituals do go a long way. They do have health implications, they do have benefits. So don't overlook building those micro rest rituals into your calendar as if you would a meeting.
I love that. Yeah. Now, what about people that have sick family members or people because, my mom's battling with Alzheimer's and I never would put myself first. I'd always say, well, I have to do this, this, and this, but I was breaking down, right? And then how do you have a thing called boundaries with somebody I try to make a jokes with this awful disease because, I'll be like, Mom, don't feed the dog. The dog's been fed 12 times and she keeps feeding the dog. So how do you keep boundaries if you're dealing with somebody, that is ill? How do you keep is there such a thing as keeping boundaries with someone that is ill? Like it's funny to me, but it's not because but it is kind of funny, Dr. Courtney, because it's like I can't say, "Hey, these are my boundaries." She'll just forget. in a minute, right? So what would you say to somebody that's trying to have boundaries with the outside world, but yet with somebody that has someone that's sick and ill? What fits with that? I'm just putting a
Say
lot
that
on
again?
I'm just putting a lot on you. I apologize.
No, I love this conversation. Do not apologize. I really feel for you. I think that caretaking is such it's a job that goes unrecognized. And as a caretaker, you are not getting gratitude, thank yous. It's a thankless job. And as a caretaker, you're expected to care with grace, even when you're frustrated, even when you're breaking down. So it's not, it's a lot. It's exhausting. It's heavy. And so, what I would say to you is you can't do it by yourself. And that is the key, is not doing it alone, having community, having your own support, because there are going to be many times where you are frustrated, where you're depleted, where you're quitting every other day. It's like, nope, I can't do this. You're throwing in the towel, and you need people that are going to pour back into you. You need community that is going to hold you up. You need folks that are going to be able to step in when you need a break, when you cannot, because you cannot do it all.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And then it's hard because you live in that world, right? And then you go out and then people ask more of you. But I guess maybe it makes it easier for me to say no because people should respect that. What do you do with people that just don't understand? How like people are so easy to cut people out of their lives, I'm finding. And some people I find that they can't. There's just two different sides of the equation. But I guess my question is what do you do with a family member that will not help out, will not, always wants to just make it about them and will not, you know, protect my boundaries when I put them out there? What would you say about that?
So that's that would be a question I would ask you, is where do you feel like your boundaries have been violated, and where does there need to be a new boundary? And how do you want that to look with this particular individual? So if this person makes it all about them, then that might be an emotional boundary that's violated. You just cannot take on someone else's stuff when you have your own stuff, you have your mom's stuff, you have your family's stuff. It's, can't. Like, I'm already at capacity with everybody else's emotions, including mine. It might be that you're not answering the phone as much as you used to. It might be that you're not spending as much time with this person as you did before. It might be that you are redirecting the conversation back to the issue at hand or yourself. So, figuring out what that looks like for you, and how do you want to be a relationship with this individual? It might be that no relationship at all is just not an option. That's not something that you'd consider, but it might be that some iteration of a relationship is okay. It's okay, we're putting you in this category. You're great. You're great for fun things. You're great for, going out on the weekends, but you're not great for emotional support. It might be that you limit the time that you have with the person who is making it all about them. It might be that you give them feedback. That's a direct way of sharing that and setting that boundary. I noticed that every time we talk about mom and the care that mom needs, you kind of make it about yourself. I want to know how we can move to a place where we can both support mom through this journey and, fill in the blank, right? So it might be that you're more direct in your feedback, and people need to hear feedback.
Love that. I love see when you say it, it's so simple. That's why everyone needs you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because you could get so exhausted and resentful, and then people like blow up at the table with pass the butter, and it's not about the butter, it's about all the
Never about the
it's
butter.
it's never about the butter.
Mm.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Now, there what would you say about a situation where someone's like, "You're trying to control me. This is not you're trying to set a boundary. You're trying to control me." What would you say to a person like that?
Mm, you're trying to control me.
Is
I
that a
think that
manipulative thing to say, right? When
it
you're trying to have
can be. It
yeah.
really can be. That is sometimes used as a tool to instill guilt so
Mhm.
that you will change your behavior or your response. It might also be feedback for you as well. And again, that goes back to, are you operating from rules or boundaries? Rules are controlling other people's behaviors, boundaries are controlling yours. So if you know in your heart of hearts that you have set a boundary and this person is just responding to the boundary, they're not okay with it, they're having a reaction to it, then that's their stuff. That's not your stuff. That's about them. That's not about you. And you know that you're operating in your truth. And so in that example, that is a manipulative tactic. And I say that a lot when folks are maybe newer to setting boundaries or setting boundaries with an individual for the first time. One, folks who have known you for X amount of time, it's going to be a new experience for them to get to know you in this way. So you're now teaching them how to relate to you differently. And that might take some time. And that initial reaction and defensiveness and anger is more about them responding to this new behavior, right? This new way of living life with you. And so you don't have to be responsible for that feeling. That's theirs to process and work through. And their response is also not an indicator that you're doing something wrong. It's just something new. And the more that you do it, again, going back to that muscle, the more that it will become the norm, just like you not having boundaries was the norm. Um, the third thing that I want to say is if the reactivity continues, you're clear, you're consistent in your boundary, and this person keeps trying to violate, trying to poke holes, keeps guilt tripping you, it's because that they have benefited from you not having any boundaries. So now you get to make that decision. What do I do with this information now? They're responding to this. They're not supporting this new journey of me trying to live a life of health and wellness. Now, what do I do with that information now that I have it?
That's so good. Even with food, I watch a lot of because I deal with a lot of health and fitness and with my clients. And I'll watch people guilt and peer pressure other people that are like, "Hey, I'm having a healthier lifestyle." And they're like, "No, just keep eating this." Just and it goes with everything, mental, physical, food. It's just but I love what you say, bring it back from the beginning to now is,
Mhm.
you're not making rules for other people. You're saying, "Hey, I'm going to eat half of this sandwich. I'm going to put the other one away. Don't shame me for it." Like, don't make me eat everything on my plate. It's wild. Yeah.
Exactly. And I
Even with
think about that too, a clear example, because I know you were asking that earlier. What's the difference? What does a boundary look like in action? So, for example, I am newly a pescatarian.
oh,
And so I've done that just for my own like health reasons. And that might look like in action when I'm going to someone's house or when I'm going to a social meal or a restaurant. It's I'm ordering these particular things that fit within that pescatarian lifestyle that I've now created for myself. And that means I'm not eating the porks and the beefs and the things like that. And folks have to respect that because that's what's on my plate. They're not putting steaks on my plate. They're not putting bacon on my plate, those types of things. So that would be the difference. And then a rule would be I'm pescatarian, so that means you need to be pescatarian too. We're going out to the restaurant. I'm going to be ordering off the seafood menu. And so I want you to do the same as my partner, as my parent, as my child. So that would be the difference between a boundary and a rule. A boundary is I'm going to order off of the seafood menu. A rule would be nobody at this table can order steaks tonight. That's the difference.
going back so that rule is control. Going back to that question of control. So yeah, if giving rules to somebody is controlling the environment where a boundary is just saying respect what I need, right?
Hmm.
And say,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, and get off my plate. Yeah, it's kind of like to get out of my. It's funny when you really stand
Get
back
off
and look
my
at it.
plate.
Like, why are you throwing things on my plate? Why are you upset about what I'm ordering? Even with people that don't drink, I'm watching other people that are drinking guilt people that don't drink, and I'm like, what do you care? Like, I know people that literally have to have sparkling water to pretend that they're drinking because other people get affected by it. I'm like, well, then maybe that person's an alcoholic and projecting a little bit because they should not care if you're drinking or not, or if that bacon's on your plate. If you really step back and you take the emotion out of stuff, people are just, I don't even know, Dr. Koi. I guess this is why you've got a great profession, just trying to figure this all out because
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. What made you wanna become a psychologist? Because
Yeah.
you were a cheerleader in high school, which is awesome. I'm sure you were all these different things. And then what was it that you just said, "I wanna get into psychology"?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we circled back to that question. I know you kinda asked me that in the beginning, and I think I just answered one part of it, but in high school is when I decided I wanna be like a psychology major. I wanna be a therapist. And at that time, it was for superficial reasons. It was, people are coming to me anyway with their problems. I might as well get paid for it. So I went into college with that very reductive thinking about what therapy and psychology means, but I did declare psychology as a major. And through college, I had, some firsthand experience to be able to explore the expansiveness of psychology and how psychology is literally interwoven into all industries, even marketing. I worked in grocery stores from high school all the way through college, and just thinking about how decisions are made about what gets to be on an end cap, what sales signs look like, what colors are used in that. And I'm like, oh man, that's cool. So through also like mentorship, it helped me to fine tune what my thinking was around psychology and what I wanted to do with that beyond the bachelor's level. And through mentorship from a Black woman who was a counseling psychologist, I joined her research lab literally the last semester of my senior year of college. And her research lab was all about strength based approaches to Black communities, Black families, Black children. And a lot of times, and historically, but also in present day, Black communities aren't spoken about in a strengths based way. Normally, it's deficit model, it's lack, and Mhm. her take on Black families and Black communities from a strengths based perspective really, I think, set the foundation for me to move on to the next level and to decide that I wanted to pursue a graduate degree. And because I knew that I did want to be a therapist of some sort, I knew that a bachelor's degree just wasn't going to cut it. Like, I had to go to graduate school. So I went the master's route first, and I attended an HBCU, and that was another really big marker in my development to be around other Black scholars, academics, graduates, and to be in community with like minded individuals, to have Black mentors who were doing the thing that I wanted to do. I hadn't seen that before. And to me, that's how I knew that this could be possible for me too. And so from there, I decided that I wanted to work specifically with Black girls through mentorship, through something, because I remember how awkward it felt for me when I was in middle school and adolescence. It was like the acne, it was stuffing the bra, it was we're friends today and we're not friends tomorrow. It was the boyfriends, it was all of that. It was just, like, weird and awkward and just like, ugh, I would never go back, and you can't make me, I would never go back. And so, I remember being a part of a group for Black girls who were paired with Black women mentors, and just how it felt to be seen, be heard, and to feel like I had a place. And from then on, I'm like, I wanna do the same thing. I wanna create the same experience, the same feeling for little Black girls coming behind me. And I was able to do that. So going into my doc program, being in community with mentors, with peers, going on to move into my career as a licensed psychologist and go through all the training necessary to make that happen, and sitting for my licensure exam, and finally being at the point where I was working a job that had a salary and benefits, and I get to have autonomy and just all the freedom. Because when you're in school for 30 years, preschool till graduate school, it's like, I wanna start making some money. I wanna, like, I wanna have a life again, and so being able to finally get to that point where, you're in your career, you're doing more of what you wanna do, that gave me the motivation, the resources, and the courage to be able to step out on faith to say, "Hey, I can create this vision, my vision, that will help other people too." And so that's what I did in 2021. I created Will by Wellness in 2021 to create that experience that I had when I was that awkward little Black girl. And in some ways, I still am. So that is how the journey looked, but why I became a psychologist then looks completely different now. You know, there are some moments that are similar or some things that are similar. You know, I think the overall reason why hasn't changed, but high school me saying, "Yeah, I just want to help people and get paid to do it because everybody's talking to me anyway," it's more expansive now. It's now I can help, I can connect, I can fellowship, I can join with people in so many different creative ways. And it's not just in the therapy room. I get to do it in moments like this, you know, sitting here with you. I get to do it by speaking to different organizations and audiences. I get to do it through coaching. I get to do it by just being a person, you know, being out in community and people seeing, like, I have a life. Yes, I brunch. Yes, I go happy hour. Yes, I have hot girl summer. Yes, I travel. So
Good.
it's psychology, being a psychologist, it's so expansive. And knowing what I know now is so much, is so much more than I knew then.
Wow. Well, I appreciate learning from you today. And I loved what you're doing. I love Willed by Wellness. People have to go to willedbywellness.com. And I love your Instagram. I follow you. And thanks for making a mark in this world and teaching me a little bit more about boundaries. I just love looking at women that really have goals and really stick to them because that can't be easy, really. Because there must have been time in school where you're just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore, and it's just so easy. So it's so nice that you're a mentor for girls that you just say, keep going. This is where you can be. And you can brunch too.
Yes, I love brunch. I always say brunch is my favorite meal of the day and activity.
I love it. Just don't put pork on your plate right now. That's good. Just keep the pork off. Have a lox. Have some lox. But Dr. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on and just being part of this conversation. And I'll put all your info in and everybody, I want you to check out Dr. J. Courtney. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This was great.
You're great. I appreciate you.